It's that time of it's that time on Sunday again, 6 p.m. Welcome to Steve's Place. And tonight we'll be having our guest star here, Russell Anderson. He'll give us a super presentation. And I'd also like to welcome all the people from his social media. This is the first time we've ever done a guest feed here. And so we expect to see, hopefully, a lot of you people here. In the meantime, okay, I'd like to remind everyone about the upcoming conference, the 2023 Extraordinary Technology Conference, uh, August 9th to 13th at the Crown Plaza, Albuquerque. Uh, Tonight, well, Friday was the last night we had 30% off, but if you go ahead and get signed up right in the next day or two, I'll go ahead and honor that 30% off. So please call us and get signed up for it. I believe the hotel has the rooms available now. I'll double check tomorrow, make sure that happened. And anyway, I expect to have a super lineup. It's all shaping up pretty good. Hopefully, the program will be out in the next 2 weeks. In the meantime, I'd like to remind everyone about our YouTube channel and encourage all of you to become members of the YouTube channel. We have 30 years of innovative ideas in energy and health. But most important, we just now put up the 2023 Extraordinary Technology Conference is now online. For those of you who are members, exclusive members at $9.99, can go up there and check it out. I'm just pretty excited about it all. We are now at about 7,400 members, or not members, but subscribers. I'd like to see us reach 10,000 subscribers by the time of the conference. It's very doable, and subscriptions are free. So I encourage everyone to at least become a subscriber and then get notified of the programs that we do put up for free. And if you become members, you can see all 1,000 conference videos that we have up there. I encourage you to go to our website, testatech.info, and check out our conference directory, so it makes it easier to search through conferences, or you can use the speaker directory if you know who you want to see. And of course, we have Steve's Place direct link right there. And I encourage you all to become that. Get up there and become a member. Get the exclusive membership. It's $9.99. It looks like we may be getting rid of the $4.99 membership and just go strictly with the $9.99. And I encourage you all to become that, an exclusive member, because you have global access 24/7 anywhere in the world, and you just can't beat that. So again, don't forget to come to the conference, and don't forget to get signed up for the YouTube. And now, without further ado, I'm going to introduce Russell Anderson, and he'll be talking tonight about the stream, the TT Brown. And so welcome aboard, Russell. I'm glad to have you back. You've been here a couple of times, I think.
Yeah, I believe I have. Yeah, this must be my third time.
Yeah, and Steve's Place, and then not to mention at the conference,
Yeah, well, the conference, I was there my first time lecturing, I guess, back in 1990 in the poster room on the very same things we're going to be talking about, and that I have spoken about and demonstrated the tech many times at the conferences. And it's just, every time I see it, I've been working with it. I built my first TT Brown's flying saucers back in end of January of 1990. And every time I see him work, or every time I see my antigravs fly, I just, the B-Field Brown effect, the T. Townsend Brown patents, it's just like magic. It's the wonder of science. The wonder, it's like what President John F. Kennedy said, let both sides explore the wonders of science and not the terrors of science.
Well, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and let you take it from here. and and introduce us to the wonderful world of T.T. Brown.
Yeah, well, Thomas Townsend Brown was a American scientist, physicist, and he spoke about electrogravitics. He coined the term electrogravitics, which is a transduction or coupling of electricity and gravity, specifically electrostatics. Uh, Pure potential, if you can get it, just electrostatic charge that is not moving across the surface, although it can move across the surface until the entire surface carries an equal charge. And that Coulomb's force is used in capacitor configurations, just as the coil is used in magnetic coil configurations to transduce electronic magnetism, basically electromagnetism. The capacitor induces gravitation, the third of the four fundamental forces, in the form of a capacitor, or Coulomb's forces, that are really the same thing as gravitational force, although gravitational force electrostatically produced is many orders of magnitude stronger than the mass gravity of a planet or a star. So anyway, I basically got interested in electrogravitics back in the mid 1980s. I came across a book by, well, actually, no, it was earlier than that. My mother gave me a book because she knew I had the interest in UFOs and how they could possibly fly without any means of visible support, and no control surfaces, no heat energy. And she gave me this book called How to Build a Flying Saucer and Other Proposals in Speculative Engineering. And I thought, my gosh, this is right up my alley if I ever saw anything. And I looked at it, and there was right in there a description of the Biefeld-Brown effect, which was a coupling of electromagnetism, specifically electrostatics, and gravity into a usable propulsion methodology. Now, Thomas Townsend Brown always had been interested as a boy in the possibilities of space travel, and then disappointed by the obvious limitations of chemical rocketry and heat energy to produce propulsion. Certainly had its limitations in exploring space. But the electrogravitic or electrical means or other force field methodologies do not suffer from that detrimental effect of, well, say you're in space, after you discharge your fuel, what are you going to do for more fuel, more reaction mass? You only have a flying fuel tank of which you're sitting at the top of or on the side of. And once that fuel is gone, it's gone. You're stranded in space unless you have some other way to eject reaction mass for a Newtonian third law of motion type action reaction. Well, electrogravitics goes beyond that. There are no moving parts. There's no fuel. There's none needed. And Thomas Townsend Brown, while playing around with a Crookes X-ray tube, he was thinking maybe the X-rays would provide some kind of force akin to a rocket force. He noticed that when he turned on the apparatus that powered the tube, the whole thing seemed to want to move. So he became intrigued by that, and then he concluded correctly that it was the electrical force in a capacitor configuration in the device that was causing the motion in the first place, and that if left free to swing, it would move. And if enough charge was present, it would certainly fly, and fly in a VTOL vertical takeoff and landing configuration, which was desirable for many reasons. Anyway, I will get right to the slideshow. What you see on this first slide, the title slide, is one of his most famous applications of his electrogravitic effect, and one that worked the best, obviously. A saucer, at least one saucer or two saucers in a round robin configuration, basically with a tower and rotor apparatus, which I replicated back in the late 90s, and then got working with electrostatic propulsion, electrostatic generator that I built. Anyway, you can see that these are basically flying saucers, what we call flying saucers or flying discs, or what people have been reported seeing in great numbers since just after World War II. They had been observed in great numbers since the late 1890s in cigar shapes and some saucer shapes and some spheroid shapes since the early 1900s or late 1890s, late 19th century, which was incredible. They had a great airship flap in the late 1890s. And these things were silent. They sometimes had powerful searchlights, and they looked like dirigibles. It's very interesting. Somebody was either on Earth or off the Earth was testing this technology in full view of the people of America and Europe and South America, Canada, the whole world. One of the most striking things about the UFO phenomenon is that it's a global phenomenon, and they tend to congregate around certain areas. And I may or may not get into that later, but it's really interesting that whoever is flying these UFOs, including us, takes an interest in our technology, especially the technology we had intended to use for self-destruction. But anyway, this technology cannot be used for self-destruction. It must only be used for good purposes, to help us get rid of fossil fuels and nuclear fuels, and help us get off the planet so the planet can renew and colonize other places in space, because we know of a lot of planets now, but well over 5,000. Anyway, here we go. One minor thing, well, a major thing, the forward wire and that forward conductor, that arc, that's about a little over 1/3 of the front of the saucer in the direction of motion, that is charged positively, and the rest of the saucer is charged negatively, which is the same thing as chassis ground or earth ground. And that's how you get your motion. The negative charges are always attracted more strongly toward the positive charges. That's the nature of electrodynamics. And it's part of Paul A. Levielette's Model G. I highly recommend you look at his books. We'll talk about his books a little bit later. Anyway, we'll go to the next slide. Opposites attract. So these electrodes, this forward wire or tube is conductive. These little triangular shaped items there are insulators, dielectrics, and the disc is negatively charged or chassis ground. So of course the disc, having more affinity for the positive charge, which is the area of highest electrical potential anyway, that just flies around the maypole because it's held in a fixed relationship. It can never reach that destination. So that charge is transduced into an electrogravitational force. In other words, the vacuum or space is polarized by using a high voltage, high tension electrical field. And the higher the intensity of the field, the stronger is the G well in front of the disk with that positive charge, and the stronger is the G hill, which the disk actually sits on and goes downhill on that. And so there's a strong downward hill force, which we normally call gravity, which is a pull or push, because all forces act in pairs, a pull and a push, from space toward the center of mass or center of gravity of a body. Now, here's Thomas Townsend Brown, this photo right here, showing one of his disks flying around. That maypole apparatus, he's operating a high voltage generator setup, a positive ion generator, basically. You want to have a positive ion generator, not negative ion generator, positive ion generator that works the best. You want a strong G well below the saucer of the G hill, but in front of the saucer in the direction of motion is the G well, the gravity well. And the saucer rides on the G hill and is alternately pulled and pushed by that G well hill phenomenon, like a wave. Picture a three-dimensional wave in space. And this thing just is a wave rider. These disks are wave riders riding that wave of electrically modified space-time into infinity as long as the charge is maintained. And the speeds are very, very fast. And because of the nature of the propulsion itself, there is no inertia. In other words, if you were riding on board these things, they could make instant starts, stops, right angle turns, the disk and anything inside that field, inside the disk, you wouldn't feel anything of it. It'd just be like standing on the earth, inside the earth's G well. Now, slide 3. There's Thomas Townsend Brown unpacking one of his saucers. I believe this series of photos was taken in California, Los Angeles, in the early 1950s, circa 1950, 51. Now, notice on the right side, that saucer, that was the size I built, that I flew in Reno, Nevada in the year 2000 with the tower and rotor apparatus and discs that I built. Notice these plexiglass insulators. And plexiglass is a really, really, really good insulator, just like regular glass. Good dielectric. Notice these spheres, these balls on the end of each end of the wire there. That's so you don't get any arcing from the wire, the end of the wire, to the disc. If you get any arcing, then the force is shorted out. You don't get any more gravitational force. So if the device shorts out either on the wiring or the disc itself, the gravitational force stops. So you always want to have the disc nice and round and smooth, and a rounded, smooth ball here on the forward conductor. You don't even need a forward conductor. You could beam with microwaves a point in space with a microwave projector on this side of the disk and a microwave projector on this side of the disk or on the bottom of the disk. And whoops, didn't want to do that. And then have a point in space that's electrified positively. And of course, the rest of the disk is negative or chassis ground. So you don't even need this forward conductor. Just make it wireless. And it should work even better. And by the way, in air, there's no drag. There's no air hitting a solid surface. It's just hitting a soft electrical field. So there's no sonic boom or skin heating. The air is just diverted away by the force field. Very great method of propulsion. Yeah, Los Angeles, California, 70 years ago. Actually, this was 73 years ago. It's about 1950. Going around the maypole. In a vacuum, there was no limit to the speed, no limit that they could see. They had to shut it off. And at that point, that was 1955, Paris, France. In November of 1955, every intelligence and military agency you can name met in lower Manhattan, or someplace in Manhattan, may have been closer to Midtown Manhattan. And they determined that this technology deserved their kind of attentions. And it was no longer taught in the schools after late 1955, early 56. And I've never seen a clearer example of a cover-up, except if you look at the works and writings of Nikola Tesla. But things are becoming more open. There's a new glasnost and a new disclosure. There's a stiff new breeze, and it's blowing the truth. And it's quite refreshing. Notice the angle this is at when it's going around the maypole. That's one force that is left on this support pole is a centrifugal force, and the centrifugal force makes it want to go out. If you have it so that they can't move outward as they're flying, they won't fly as well, and you need more power to feed in. It's one important item there. Now, there's the tower and rotor apparatus with the 1 meter diameter flying saucers that I built way back in the 90s. And this is in the year 2000, June about 23rd or 24th, about that, in Reno, Nevada, Reno Library, downtown Reno, Nevada. And these are being powered with about 120,000 volts at some tens of microamps. Not a lot of electrical power at all, but the force is so much more. So that's why these devices are over unity, and they break cherished physical laws, such as the conservation of energy law, which says energy may not be created or destroyed, only converted, only changed in form, converted in form. And that's what these do. These take electrical energy and convert it into gravitational energy. But the conversion of energy is so much more than you get with any other system known to our science. You get far more energy out in propulsion than you put in wattage or calories. It is just incredible to see this. Inertia free, no fuel, no moving parts, and no noise. And that is one of the most striking characteristics of actual UFOs. There is no sound whatsoever. Silent nights and days. And yeah, here I am, a little thinner version of me from 23 years ago, back in Reno, Nevada in the year 2000. It's my lab partner, Dave, great friend since 1988. Anyway, yeah, you can build these on your kitchen table and experiment. And I get my lab equipment and high voltage generators as finished units and kits from, I've been getting them from Information Unlimited in Amherst, New Hampshire for the longest time, since the 80s. And there's also a great store here in Orlando, downtown Orlando, just on the outskirts of downtown Orlando, called Skycraft. And their logo is a flying disc, flying craft, flying saucer. And they have all kind of surplus electronic, you know what, you name it, they have it. So all the electrical experimenters in Florida know where to go. I think they also do mail order. Yeah, so just 3-foot diameter, 1 meter, I guess a little over 1 meter diameter flying saucers. And we got the equipment, all this equipment, the tower and rotor, PVC pipe, aluminum, copper tube, we got from Home Depot. We used to joke that you can get all the equipment you need to build your own starships at Home Depot. What a great place. Yeah, there it is, just a flying capacitor, the T.T. Brown Electrokinetic Apparatus. It's your typical flying saucer, double convex, and the profile is circular. That forward electrode could just be a thin stainless steel wire. That's all you need. And charged positively, there's your high voltage unit right there. Out of the left end is the positive polarity, strong positive. That's why you need a strong positive electricity coming out of your ion generator, positive ion generator. And then chassis ground goes to the rest of the disk, the outer hull, because the charges naturally want to stay on the outside of an enclosed structure. This is the profile that works the best. Think of the terminus of a Tesla coil or a Van de Graaff type generator. You want to maintain charge. You want to hold on to charge with as little leakage as possible. Lost charge is lost propulsive force and acceleration. Yeah, a $2.3 billion flying capacitor. That's the B-2 Spirit stealth bomber. Notice that same strong positive charge on the leading edge. The ship wants to fly towards the positive charge because that's your gravity well. The ship itself is sliding down a gravity hill. That is because of the negative charge. Negative charges are repulsive. Positive charges are attractive. That's subquantum kinetics. I highly recommend you read Subquantum Kinetics by Paul A. Laviolette and look at Model G specifically. And look at the formulae in there that explains how you optimize these devices for a minimum input. Now, this is also T. Townsend Brown's famous flame jet generator patent. Positive charges are pumped to the outer shell of the leading edge. Then there's a dielectric of depleted uranium. You want something with a very high K factor. That's a dielectric, which uranium oxide is. And that's also a high mass, as high a mass as possible. Now, what's shot out the back of the engines and what goes into the engines is a highly negative charge. So you get that all-important separation of charge that you need. There's your gravity well in front of the positive charge, and your ship is sliding down that gravity hill. Now imagine this gravity well hill phenomenon in 3 dimensions. And that's what it would look like without this right here. It's basically what we call the rubber sheet model. And that helps you envision a gravity field in 2 dimensions. But of course, gravity operates in 3 and 4 dimensions, the 4th being time. The intensity of gravity affects the flow of time. Where there's hardly any gravity, time flows much faster. This is demonstrable and provable. Where there's a very high gravitational potential, gravity flows slower. The higher the gravitational potential, the slower time flows. And that, again, is demonstrable and provable. It's called gravitational time dilation. Yeah, there's what it looks like. And notice this cloud effect of the condensation. that is enhanced by electrogravitics. Also, the electrogravitic effect makes radar beams just slide around this flying device, this flying capacitor, without bouncing back. With no echo, the radar can't see it, and neither can an adversary. So this is used to great effect. Nothing can touch this, just like the song. There are the intakes at the front. Out the back are shot the negative charges, positive charges here, and there's enough separation of charge that you won't get any arcing. So very, very high voltage into the megavolt range. With this flame jet generator, you can generate up to 15 million volts, which is way more than enough you need to get a really good electrogravitational effect. And here's the next generation of that craft, which was seen around many places in the world. And it's known as the Telos. It's a boomerang-shaped device. Certain configurations that work well with electrogravitics. Saucer is one, triangle is another, boomerang is yet another. Think of the stealth bomber as a boomerang-type craft. Lots of advantages to electrogravitics. No sonic boom, no skin heating, reduced or no radar signature at all. There's a cross-section on top of the Spirit bomber and the Telos. Telos, you wouldn't be able to see it at night except for the lights on the bottom. And those are plasma lights. They're not LEDs and they're not incandescents, which is interesting. Also, these lights, no matter what color they are, and I've seen actual craft, their craft look the same chroma and spectra as laser lights. Very pure colors, very pure reds, very pure monochromatic blue and monochromatic green. You know when you're seeing something odd, something not out of the ordinary. And I've been looking at aircraft all my life, and that's a long time. I highly recommend this book. I know that Steve Ellswick has sold this book at the bookstore at the conferences held every summer, every July or August. And it's August this year, middle of August, at the bookstore. T.T. Brown's Electrogravitic Research. And here's the electrogravitic apparatus on the cover. And there he is in LA, sitting in the middle, operating the generator. It's vacuum chamber stuff, vacuum chamber apparatus. Highly recommend you look at that and study that, because that'll help you in your research more than a lot of books that I've seen. But they're all helpful. They're all helpful. I highly recommend this one. Paul A. Laviolette, who I believe just died. I hope I'm wrong, but I think he died about a year and a half ago. I saw him first in 1990 in Colorado Springs at the Tesla Tech conference. And his book, Secrets of Antigravity Propulsion, delves deeply into the electrogravitic effect, shows why its warp drive, many times faster than the speed of light. Oh, incidentally, if you look online or have been online lately, there are so many incredible discoveries coming out. One of them is that they have actually made warp bubbles that are capable of going 10 times the speed of light in the laboratory. And a team of physicists wasn't even looking for an Alcubierre type warp bubble, but they inadvertently created one and can create them at will in the laboratory. And now they just can scale them up like anything else. And we can start to study these things. And the future is now. What was science fiction is science fiction no longer. But don't forget, this stuff came out a long time ago. Germany, under Nazism, also did electrogravitics work because they heard about T. Townsend Brown's work and got his patents for pennies on the dollar, just like they got a hold of Robert Goddard's patents for pennies on the dollars and took both technologies and ran with them. Of course, the alternative science technology that doesn't deal with explosions of heat energy really did a lot with this technology, and there's a lot of really interesting stuff. Look at electric gravity, and it supports the phenomenon in general relativity, believe it or not. So the laws of physics as taught are correct. But what's going on with these electrogravitic devices and similar discoveries, don't forget the aforementioned warp bubble confirmation discovery, delve into a deeper understanding and elucidation of phenomena we see and observe in physics. So physics is being rewritten finally as we speak, which is really exciting. I thought I'd never live to see that, but it's being done. Highly recommend these two books, Electrogravitics Systems by Tom Vallone, and the second volume. And of course, there's the Electrokinetic Apparatus, Thomas Townsend Brown holding one of his flying discs on the cover. There's the, I believe that's the alien reproduction vehicle, which is really an Earth reproduction vehicle because electrogravitics is earthly technology. But once they started crashing after World War II, we discovered that our initial research was correct. They just use a little different material science than we do, but they helped advance our material science as well. Yeah, there's the device that I built back in the 90s and being demonstrated in Reno, Nevada. And of course, you can make it levitate and do the anti-gravity vertical takeoff and levitation and landing thing. If you just build it light enough, then you don't have to feed in an ungodly amount of power, because there are always losses from these sharp corners. You want everything as round and smooth as possible for this type of propulsion. And I don't know what that is. Now, there's your G well. Positive charge is right below your G well. Positive charges are attractive on matter. There's your G hill. Negative charges are repulsive on matter. So remember, all forces act in pairs. This thing wants to go in the direction of the positive charge. And go it does. Yeah, and there's a rubber sheet model again with the Alcubierre warp drive metric, which permits the existence of faster than light travel within the framework of general relativity, just like the subtitle of that book. There's the Alcubierre warp drive metric. There's the equation right up at the top. So the vacuum of space is being polarized with a high voltage charge. And the higher the voltage, the more the bending of space-time into a wave-like phenomenon. Just like you're riding a wave of electrogravitational energy, like you're riding a surfboard at the beach. And of course, these waves can travel much, much faster than light. But you're sitting right about in here in the eye of the hurricane. You don't feel any force, no G-force, and no inertia. You switch polarity, you're instantly off in any direction you choose, depending on where your positive charge is oriented. There it is. Very simple, clean, no fuel, no moving parts, no use of heat energy for propulsion in the atmosphere, no use of aerodynamics. Think of this as electrohydrodynamics. There it is again. Yeah, there's what I call one of my beam shits, and I sell these as kits. Sold them for 21 years since 2002, just about 21 years. On this one, this is a 4-foot diameter triangular model. I use inefficient copper wire, so the electrical requirements in terms of wattage are a little bit more. Later on, I switched to stainless steel wire and got the same effect with much less power input. So was a rise in efficiency. I also wrote a paper on it with my data table on my findings. It shows the larger you build them, the more efficient they are, which is also one of the tenets of the Biefeld-Brown effect for electrogravitic propulsion. And if you build them a certain configuration, whether it's a saucer or a triangle, they seem to work better too. But this is basically a flying capacitor, but vertical takeoff and landing capacitor. And there's a 6-foot beamship variation 3. The 4-footer was beamship variation 2. This is a 6-footer beamship variation 3. And it has a framework of balsa, which is hard to see in this photograph. That helps keep the structure stiff enough so that you don't get any loss in efficiency. But that's running off a high voltage generator that's right here. And there it is in anti-gravitational mode, the 6-footer beamship variation 3. You can see a little bit more of the framework there. You could make the framework solid, still work great. And there's a 3-footer Variation 1, Beamship Variation 1, June 30th, 2002, 21 years ago almost, in Valley Forge, PA, at my old flying club for radio-controlled aircraft. And there it is, a Beamship. There's a 5-footer, Beamship Variation 5, in the lab here in Altamont Springs, Florida. And there it is, energized. Doesn't take much to get these up in the air and flying. Just a few watts, or some tens of watts. John Fiala, my good friend, who I met in 2000 when we gave that first demo with the flying discs, he has a side hobby of building high voltage generators. Well, he bought one of my beam ships, and the very next year he powered it. Well, he had gotten it flying before with other smaller generators. He powered it with a super high power generator. He says it took off so fast that these bottom pods and the lower part of it, lower frame, was left on the ground, while the upper frame and the foil was somewhere around the ceiling in a fraction of a second. And that was, probably hundreds of miles an hour with no air movement, hundreds of miles per hour with no discernible air movement. In fact, whatever ion wind is generated, the U.S. Army showed it was far too feeble to elevate even a 3-gram model. And there's an upper limit to the force with ion wind. So obviously, this cannot be a wind force, and it works more efficiently in vacuum. There's no wind in a vacuum. Now, this is electrical potential defined in the work required to move a charge over a distance in an electric field. This is what gets you your efficiency. And for anybody that studied electrostatics or electrodynamics or electrical engineering, these formulae are very familiar. So I highly recommend you look at that. That'll help you in the work if you choose to do this work. Now, Oleg Jefimenko, Russian scientist, whose work I highly respect, and he has a book on electrostatic motors that I bought, a very important book. He relates the electrogravitic field, electrokinetic field, which is a motional electric field, like Hooper talks about in his books, relates it to Maxwell's equations. And I think this is a very cogent analysis of what's going on with these devices. Very important stuff. This will get us to Mars in a few days. Alpha Centauri, Proxima Centauri star group, Proxima Centauri 4, which is should be an Earth-like planet in the Goldilocks zone. Get there in less than a month, maybe a couple weeks. And no time dilation, because you don't get heavier and heavier. There's no inertia. Inertia is canceled by the electrical field. So no time dilation. When you get back after a round trip of a month, assuming you're going to do some kind of planetary survey, your friends and relatives won't be any older than you. And the formula for calculating gravitational force is right here. And the basic equation for calculating electrogravitics, it looks just like the regular equation for calculating gravitational force. F equals V. Well, F is force, of course, and where V is voltage, M is the positive polarity conductor, M1, and M2 is a negative polarity conductor. And that's over R squared, or divided by R squared. R is the radius in area of the device. So that'll help you design devices that'll work with hardly any electrical input at all. But of course, the stronger the charge, the more intense the charge, the more intense the gravitational force, the electrogravitational force that levitates you. And don't forget, gravity is the weakest of the 4 fundamental forces in nature. This electrogravitic force is far, far more powerful. Now, this is a patent, I believe, by James Frank King, who worked with Thomas Townsend Brown at Thomas Townsend Brown's laboratory, well, actually Agnew H. Banson's labs in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. and that was around from 1957 or 56 to 1959. By 1959, he was up in Pennsylvania, southeastern Pennsylvania, only a few miles from where I used to live at GE Space Center, where they had a huge vacuum chamber. Now it's Lockheed Martin since about 30 some years ago. That is a man-made Adamski type saucer, kind of primitive by today's standards. And this is the flux of gravitational force you want in your electrogravitic device. It would be like a toroid, look like a donut, and the vector or direction of your force is always from your negative to your positive. So if your ship is positive, it wants to go, or sorry, negative. If your ship is negative or chassis ground, it wants to go toward that positive. So you get a force of ether or space fabric in this direction. In at the bottom, out at the top. And that's what will take you any place in the universe you want to go. And there's something else from Banson Labs. It's a line diagram of a test lift system rig of what is named a tri-arcuate saucer, 3 arcs. 1 arc here, 1 arc here, 1 arc there. That proved to have the most lift for the least power input. And then this device is a dielectric here, that piece. So this would be a negative plate or cathode. This would be a positive plate or anode. And that flies. And you have a test weight at the bottom to see how much you can lift versus a given input of electrical energy. Now, here's a T.T. Brown rig with 2 conductors on either side. So the disk is always charged positive. On either side, you can, the disk is always charged negative. I keep saying positive, always negative. Here's a positive pole here, positive pole here. You can switch polarity so the positive is on either side and the disk changes its direction instantaneously. And that's a pretty cool effect and graphically demonstrates electrogravitic force. There's no inertia, no g-forces. You don't feel a thing when you're riding inside one of these. When you're inside the field, all the atoms, you're subject to that field, all the atoms and molecules move at the same rate. There's no freight cars effect of moving atom by atom by atom. Yeah, the positive electrode, everything wants to fall into that. So that's the small electrode. The big electrode is your cathode, small electrode is your anode. And you have your high voltage source. Notice the largest line is the one of largest electrical potential. That's your positive. That's your gravity well. And here's an illustration of that aforementioned freight cars effect by Leonard G. Cramp. Highly recommend his books. Those Piece for a Jigsaw books are excellent and helped elucidate electrogravitics for me anyway. Normally, in all other propulsion, you have a freight cars effect where you have something exerting force from the rear or at some point on the device, and then that propulsion is translated atom by atom by atom by atom as if the atoms were freight cars. And look what happens. But if the force happens to each car simultaneously, as it does, say, in electrogravitics, there's none of that. No push, no pull, everything moves at the same rate. So there are no g-forces. And this is a nice model of line drawings of an electrogravitic saucer with your electrostatic generators, your T.T. Brown capacitors, and even portholes. And there's a diagram of a pretty simple to devise electrostatic saucer, electrogravitic saucer, that would utilize the T.T. Brown electrokinetic apparatus technique to fly. You have a transformer coil and some field coils to generate high voltage, some static generators, and single plate capacitors. And their single plate capacitors would be in the form of metallic spheres, which would control your attitude and also be auxiliary propulsion. And surrounding the ship is a vacuum, either a partial vacuum or a full vacuum, depending on the strength of the charge. The stronger the charge, the higher the voltage, the stronger the vacuum that the ship is sitting in the air. That's very important to understanding this stuff. Now, the factors that increase the force in parallel plate capacitors and these type of thrusters, which Hector Serrano also around the year 2000, 2001, co-created and co-patented with NASA. And I'm not too far from the Space Coast, less than an hour from my house. Voltage, primary factor. The greater the voltage, the greater the force. That's factor number one. Two is the area of the plates, and I found that out as well in my flying capacitor experiments. The greater the area equals a greater force. The greater the area of the plates equals a greater force. Three, distance between the plates. The smaller the distance between the plates, the greater the force. And number four, greater the dielectric K factor of the dielectric that is between the plates, the greater the force. And five, the greater the mass of the dielectric between the plates, the greater the force, which explains by dielectrics like barium titanate and depleted uranium oxide, which is used in that dielectric in the B-2 Spirit bomber, are so popular. And you have Coulomb's law of electrostatic attraction. Very, very important, because there's where your electrogravitic force is coming from in the first place. And the force is transduced into electrogravitic charge and a high electrical field because those electrodes are in a fixed relationship. If those electrodes are allowed to move, you're losing electrogravitic force. So you want those electrodes to be in totally fixed relationship and not to move. And that's where F is the electrostatic force between the charges in newtons. Q is the magnitude of the first charge in coulombs. Q is always charge. And Q is the magnitude of the second charge in the coulombs. R is the shortest distance between the charges in nanometers. Well, in meters, in meters. And K is the coulombs constant. And there's what is equal to 8.98756 times 10 to the 9th power newtons, that the N is newtons, times M, which is the mass squared, over C squared. And there's your Coulomb's charge in a nutshell. Now, the Germans in the 1930s, starting in the late 1920s, the alternative energy societies, they had an alternative energy analog to the German Rocket Society, headed by Werner von Braun and Dr. Hermann Oberth. They had a Vril and Thule, basically alternative energy society. Vril, I'm pretty sure, is either etheric force, the ether, or pure electrostatic potential, electric force. Now, notice on this device here, you have what looks like a segmented rotor passing through electromagnets at the periphery, which is going to generate a pulse. And then that's sending a high voltage charge to insulators that carry the charge to the hull. That's electrogravitics for you. And there's your typical saucer, looks like the Searle effect saucer, which is also one of my areas of expertise for the last 30-some years. And there it is on the ground. It's a very primitive round crew cabin. And this device is about 53 feet in diameter. And there's the back of the head of, I believe that's Maria Orsic, who was a German psychic, and she claimed she got propulsion secrets after contacting a extraterrestrial group in the constellation of Aldebaran, or I'm sorry, the star of Aldebaran, which was kind of odd, kind of interesting at the same time. A lot of cases in electrogravitics of people having contact with other forces in the universe, like David Hamill. Read the book, The Granite Man and the Butterfly. He built a successful UFO drive after he was allowed on board a UFO and took a ride on a UFO. He copied the propulsion system and basically worked the exact same way. Free energy and electrogravitics. The two go hand in hand. And there's in the laboratory one of an electrogravitic model that I had been working on here in Florida, still working on. It's a version of an electrogravitic device called a Graviflyer or Gravilod from Alexei Chekhov. And my lecture on that is available from Tesla Tech. Still working on that. Everybody's trying to get this to go. This is the next generation because it's heavy lift for even less input power. And there's Chekhov testing it somewhere. That's either Portugal, I believe that is Portugal, in Western Europe. It's testing a version that I worked on here in Florida. And there it is, about 6-7 meters up in the air. Yeah, small device, but large effect. With electrogravitics, you can do some amazing things, including break cherished physical laws like Newton's first and third laws of motion and the aforementioned conservation of energy law. And there's his equipment. Tesla coil. That Tesla coil is operating on the 1 to 2 megahertz range and a voltage of about 2,840 volts. Don't even feel it. But if you wear a metallic wedding ring, you will definitely feel your wedding ring getting hot around your finger if you're anywhere near less than 2 meters away from the Tesla coil. And a high voltage DC unit, which is low high voltage, maybe anywhere from 15 to 25,000 volts. And an ultrasonic generator that's generating about a frequency of about 80 to 120 decibels at maybe, let's say 1 megahertz. You want to be in resonance with the Tesla coil. Everything is designed in this system to be in resonance. This is a next generation anti-gravity device and more consistent with Tesla technology. Tesla said, think of anything in the universe and nature in terms of power and resonance. And you can do a lot of amazing things, which he did. 770 patents to Tesla's name, many of which we still use for over a century. As the diagram of the force fields around Chekhov's anti-gravity device. Of course, the closer these plates are, of course, the upper one is charged positively, which is what you'd expect. The negative one is charged, the lower one is charged negatively. That's, again, for electrogravitics, that's what you'd expect. And the Tesla coil is powering an AC field, putting an AC potential on that center plate. And there are magnets on the lower disk, on the negative disk, with their north poles facing upwards, 6 magnets. They're ring magnets. So what happens is the lines of gravitational force coming in from outer space along the plumb line toward the center of the Earth are diverted by this resonant electromagnetic field and an electrogravitic field too. In resonance, everything's in resonance, and that's how it starts to lift off. And then by adjusting the parameters of the devices, you can get more or less resonance. Of course, less resonance is not going to want to fly. And there's a circuit diagram of that device, of the devices that power that flying device, the Alexei Chekhov flying capacitor, basically. The ultrasonic generator is designed to mimic the systems that are also found in nature with flying insects, where you have a beating set of wings that are oscillating an ultrasonic frequency or a very, very high frequency. And on the inside of the wing covers, those smooth chitinous wing covers, you have multiple cavities for cavity structural effect. It's a cavity structural engineering found in nature. And that effect has been shown to be repulsive against mass. Yeah, we can have starships just like we see in science fiction. and have been reading in science fiction for 100 years. We can have this technology, but we already have it. And it's been refined, developed, and improved upon. And I believe there's definitely a breakaway civilization that has gone out into space since the 1960s and 70s and established colonies on other worlds. And in this solar system as well, with Mars, perhaps. And yeah, we can learn a lot about space and about our Earth with electrogravitic technology. We can start to explore the final frontier and renew our planet because electrogravitic technologies are not polluting. There's no noise pollution, no efflux, no emission except for high voltage and ozone in the atmosphere. And you're off and going much, much faster than the speed of light. Just like those aforementioned warp bubbles that have recently been created in the lab. We live in an age of wonders. And electrogravitics is a wonder that was created, first discovered by Thomas Townsend Brown in this country in 1923, 100 years ago. So, yeah, we have a long history of this stuff. And that's my spiel for the nighttime. And Steve, you're free to, and anybody's free to ask questions. I don't know if the chat's working, but you can see if we can get some chat action. But yeah, there we go.
Well, we have a question. A couple slides back, we're showing a book, and they're wondering what author and book title.
Oh, there were a few books. Let me go back to the book section.
Well, I think you passed it. Go back the other way.
Let's see. I'll go a little slower. Yeah, usually I have double this number of slides at least.
I just passed it. I believe that was that one there.
Oh,
That one right
not that?
Go back one, I think. 39. Right there.
Ah, yeah, Leonard G. Cramp, C-R-A-M-P, Piece for a Jigsaw. His Piece for a Jigsaw series, which he first started publishing, and I got a hardcover copy of that at a UFO conference in late 1980s, 1988 in Manhattan, in Midtown Manhattan. And that's from Piece for a Jigsaw, where you can see right there, author and book title here, Piece for a Jigsaw. Piece for a Jigsaw. I think there's Piece for a Jigsaw, the original, and then Piece for a Jigsaw 2, Piece for a Jigsaw 3, which are published by Information Unlimited Press out of Kempton, Illinois. And they have a lot of really good books on electrogravitics and free energy and UFOs and all sorts of things that inquiring minds want to know about.
Well, I try to have a lot of their books over at the, when I do the conference, so we try to get them up at the conference.
Yeah, this shape, if you want to build something that will utilize fields of artificially generated gravitational force for propulsion, this is the shape that seems to work the best.
Here's another question here. Since the Russians are really into electrogravitics, do you have any Russian colleagues to share research with?
Yes, I do. Alexei Chekhirkov is one, and I have bought a couple of his kits and working with him. And also, yes, remember New Energy Technologies magazine? Do you remember who published that? This guy out of St. Petersburg, Russia. And let's see, I published an article in there. Hold on one sec. Yeah, if you're online, go online and look for beam ship technology. Is that going to show up not reversed? Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, beam ship technology. There I am flying a 4-footer in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, flying field. Beamship Technology. It gives my email. And that's Faraday Lab Limited. Alexander Frolov. Alexander Frolov. He wanted me to publish in his publication first, which I did. I wrote a paper for him and included my data and my data table from my experiments in 2002. And he published in New Energy, the magazine, New Energy Technologies magazine, published by Faraday Labs, 6 times a year. I'm not sure they're still publishing. And Yeah, that was Alexander Frolov in Russia, from St. Petersburg, Russia.
Is he still around?
I don't know. I haven't heard from him in a while. But if you enter the title Beamship Technology, early 20th century discoveries, you'll see that article come up in the cover of the magazine, and I have the copy of that magazine, the journal. But it's showing Beamship flying outdoors, indoors, and I included my paper. So Alexander Frolov from New Energy Technologies Journal in St. Petersburg, Russia.
And just for a second, I'd like to remind everyone to give us a thumbs up.
I'd like to see that thumbs up. That shows we're doing our job.
Yeah,
we're keeping the folks entertained.
It helps the search engines to find us. It's extremely important.
We live in an information age and it's called an information age for a reason. All the information you ever want is right out there at your fingertips with just like 1 or 2 clicks. Imagine if you have a chip in your head that can, like Wi-Fi, you never have to go to school. Anything you want to learn to be instantly attainable.
And that's the great thing about our YouTube channel here is that this year you get global access 24/7. I mean, you could be sitting in a trench in the middle of the Ukraine, during a break and watching this stuff, to get a break from the seriousness of stuff that's happening there. That's how pervasive this stuff is. This technology where you can see this stuff 24/7 globally is truly a miracle. I wish I would have had this 20 years ago. I think we'd be a lot further along.
Oh yeah, wow.
So it's just a miracle here. And you are going to be at our conference, right?
I will be there. I plan to be there, and I'm beginning a new and exciting talk that everyone who cares about this type of stuff really needs to see.
And you always have hardware there.
And I always have working hardware. That's what we've been saying since the late 80s and early 90s. Working hardware, not vaporware. Yeah. Anything else is just not going to cut it. You have to have working hardware to show that we can do what we say we can do.
We want hardware, not hot air.
There you go. I like that one.
We have enough global warming here.
Yeah, we have too much hot air. Yeah. But talk about global warming and ameliorating our climate crises, which are self-generated. We can do that with electrogravitic technology. I love that line in the last part of Back to the Future where Christopher Lloyd, Doc Brown, says, roads, where we're going, we don't need roads. As Marty McFly says, back up, Doc. You don't have enough road to get up to 88 miles an hour. He goes, we don't need roads. I like that. But think if we didn't have to, build roads, we just leave everything pristine and just, glide over a surface, or fly, any altitude we want. Electrogravitically, you get anywhere on the earth from anywhere in 30 minutes or less.
And here you go. Would you consider making personal anti-gravity vehicles on a mass scale?
Of course, just like personal drones are being built now. They're all over YouTube, and personal jetpacks. Is no reason why we can't have personal antigraphs. Uh, this technology is even more accessible, and kids have been winning science fairs with my assistance with it since 2003, uh, almost almost 20 years.
It never ceases to amaze me, how we now have like SpaceX and all these space companies, trying to get out in space using the old chemical rockets, and I believe that we are way beyond that,
And we've been beyond it for a long time.
in
Don't
the
forget
government.
that this technology has been secretized for a long time, since the 1930s, even though so much of it had been in the public domain. And until that conference in Lower Manhattan in 1955, November 1955, it was taught in schools. Larry Davenport, who is a good friend and colleague, who I saw his demonstration and talk at Tesla Tech years ago. I've admired his work for a long time too. He said he first learned about it in school. Can you say cover up? Goodness sakes. Just
Yeah.
like they did to Tesla's work and Otis T. Carr. Look what they did to Otis T. Carr. Basically, a SWAT team came to his lab and his company offices and said, "We're going to shut you down because your work jeopardizes our financial system."
Well, now
But they
there's a
said the
lot of
same
stuff.
thing to all these inventors, didn't they?
Well, see, the thing is that a lot of the stuff, especially at our conference, is disruptive, very disruptive technology.
Bingo! It's
And,
disruptive as heck to
the pro-
to our antiquated systems, as Jack Nicholson put it in Easy Rider when he was talking about UFOs. He said, these UFO people operate on a totally higher level than the people living here, and our systems are already antiquated, and there's no reason why we have to use internal combustion anymore. We could use hydrogen. Hydrogen doesn't pollute the environment. Hydrogen power, and generating internal combustion hydrogen, that might work, but you still get noise with electrogravitics, such as the Searle technology that I work on, and T. Townsend Brown stuff that I've also worked on. There's no noise. There's no pollution. There's just clean propulsion and efficient use of natural forces present in nature all around us every second.
well, you gotta understand though that this planet is being run by fossil fuel people, and
Money and power, same old, same old.
and what we are doing here is called
Nonsense.
disruptive. And I'm thinking about renaming my conference to the Disruptive Technology Conference.
Yeah, well, that will generate some interest, I'm sure. It might generate the wrong kind of interest, but I say, the heck with it. We're old. It's long past time for this technology to come out. Look how many years it's been sequestered and suppressed. A century basically. And we're been in a new age lately, where a lot of this stuff is now coming out, and we're in a new openness, a new glasnost, where the disruptive technologies are being let out. The cats are being let out of the bags, and they're saying, "Oh, well, I guess they're saying, yeah, we know these UAPs, or they're not calling them UFOs anymore. They're calling them UAPs. We know what they are. We don't know where they come from, but we know they don't operate with any wings, tails, surfaces, control surfaces, no internal combustion, but yet they do things that our technology cannot. And it's a new openness. I think part of it is the openness of the information age, the openness of the internet that affords openness on so many subjects that heretofore had been suppressed.
Yeah, and I think one of the new tactics they have now is instead of trying to silence us, they're trying to push out so much misinformation out there that everybody gets confused, you know. And that's to come. I find that people, like when I put something in writing, people and put it on paper and print it, people are tending to believe it, as opposed to just reading it on the internet, because the internet has
Exactly.
uh, like
And
a
that's
big
also because sadly anybody can put anything on the internet, even if it's totally untrue. But
yeah.
this technology has been written about in many books, of course, and verified by many experimenters and inventors and patented, and works like a dream, works like a charm. And it's obviously a hop, skip, and a jump ahead of what we're using currently, at least publicly.
So anyway, on that note, I'm going to go ahead and call it a night. And
Sounds great. I'm starving. I got tacos waiting.
I'd like to thank everybody for showing up tonight. And like I said, don't forget to go ahead and smash that thumbs up. We can always use the promo, and share this link. Let other people find it. And with that, I'm going to say good night, and I'll see you on. It'll probably be the week after next, because next week is Easter. Thank you much. Bye.